This is Weights and Wealth, your one-stop shop for entertaining education on building a stronger body and bank account.
We are not doctors or financial advisors and must warn you this is not medical or investing advice. It is for your entertainment.
Welcome back to Weights and Wealth. In this episode, we will be telling you why weights and wealth, not the podcast is the most important thing in your life, but weights and wealth themselves might not be the most important things in your life.
Mm-hmm. This week's shout out goes to Hugh from Dayton,
Ohio.
Yeah.
Hugh shared one of our posts on Instagram. So thank you for sharing the podcast, Hugh. You'll be earning a raffle into the monthly, an entry into the monthly raffle. Mm-hmm. I think this is our 7th episode we've recorded today. So Nick, my brain, I'm not sure about Nick. My brain is starting to lose it.
Getting a little tired, but that doesn't mean this won't be a quality episode.
Oh, it will be top notch. Mm-hmm. The weights wisdom of the week this week is if you're eating a whole food diet or a mostly whole food diet, you may need to supplement with some sodium to start feeling better and get better pumps at the gym, have better energy levels. So that sounds like you, if you eat a mostly whole food diet, you can get an electrolyte powder. And we're talking about something like LMNT, not Gatorade. And if that doesn't float your boat, you can put Himalayan pink salt in your water. Nick does that a lot.
Yeah, I put the pink salt into most of my water, and now I honestly do it just for the taste sometimes. Yeah. Like I've just gotten used to that taste, and it just tastes good now.
I've gotten so used to drinking salt in my water or seltzers. Now drinking water is boring. And I never understood how people got to that point, but I finally get it now.
Yeah. All right, and then this episode's intro article is actually a tweet. This guy, Rajat Soni, who's a CFA, and then on Twitter, he was just tweeting about when the U.S. went off the gold standard, we saw a lot of prices go up, like the CPI started shooting up. Now, why exactly? Like they could just be correlated. This is something that's really hard to really drill down, but it should be something that's at least investigated. Mm-hmm. And when the U.S. left the gold standard, they no longer had to print, or they no longer had to tie the money supply to an amount of gold, which kind of let them just print as much as possible. And now people who support the Fed, they want the government to be able to like kind of help the economy, like when there's a big boom, bring it back down a little bit, and then when there's a bust, to bring it back up. Now, I personally don't think that it actually works like that. I think it kind of just makes the conditions worse. But he had a bunch of graphs just showing that when we went off the gold standard was kind of an inflection point for when prices started to rise to compensation. Pretty much everything started to rise, including productivity at work. So you would think like up until that point, compensation and productivity were very tightly bound. And then all of a sudden productivity started going up and compensation started staying the same.
This is why people say that like the millennials have the huge gripe with boomers, where millennials feel they can't buy a house because it's much less affordable than it was for the boomers. Back in the day of the boomers, you save up for a few years, you buy a house. Now houses are $1 million in some areas, and it's very hard to afford your own home.
Yeah, I mean, he posted the cost of living from 1971 with the new house being $25,000 and the average income was $10,622. So, that's only 2.5 years of income. Whereas now, I mean, I think the average is around 60,000. You aren't really finding, anything under 200,000 anymore. Like that is very, very hard to find. And then some other things like the tuition to Harvard was only $2,600 per year. Now, a lot of universities cost more per year than the average starting salary from that college.
Yeah, it's hard to isolate coming off the gold standard as a reason for some of these things, because if you look at the government getting involved in student loans and more involved in healthcare and more involved in loans for people with affordable housing programs, you also start to see these rises in the cost of things. So it's hard to tell if it's the government getting involved or if it's the gold standard or if it's any other number of variables. But we'll post this Twitter thread in the show notes if you want to go through it. And if you're watching, you've seen these graphs cycle through for the past minute and a half that we mentioned it. So if you're looking for that Twitter thread, it's Rajat Soni, and we'll post that in the show notes on the website.
All right, now getting into today's episode a little bit, our talk is actually the chapter of Genesis, and really the way in which that we believe God made the world. And so he made it 7 days, like our week. For the first 5 days, he created, the sun, animals, plants, stuff like that. And he said it was good. Sixth day, he created humans, which was very good. And then the seventh is rest. So that's kind of how I at least try to order my week. Like I work at my job 5 days a week. Saturdays, I usually am working on the podcast or something else that I really enjoy working on.
Yep.
And I try not to do too much work on Sunday because your body does need a rest.
Yeah, I try to usually have my rest day for lifting fall on Sunday, when it depends on the program I'm running, but usually Sunday will be a rest day. Sunday, go to church and spend time with family, right? I try to not have anything on my schedule for Sunday. In the fall, football winds up taking over a big portion of Sunday. But just like Nick said, got my normal 9 to 5 during the weekdays, and then Saturday is a day I think that you can use for your side hustle or for any work that you have to do on or around your house, etc.
Yeah. Okay. And now the importance of setting priorities. So it's really important to begin with the end in mind, and you kind of want to have your end goal and be able to take steps to work towards that goal. So whatever your goal is in life, my ultimate goal is really just to be happy with my life. And I kind of try to allocate my time so that I can reach that goal. And so Ted and I, we both believe in God, and I do think that everybody worships something. So if you don't worship God, you have something else. And there can be, I still think lesser things, but that can be okay. And then there are things that are not so good, such as I don't think you should worship money or your health. And if those are your two biggest goals in your life over in your relationships with other people, I don't think that's conducive to being happy.
Yeah.
Yeah, anything you want to say on that? Or
yeah, so we've talked before about how your lifting and your diet should enhance your life, right? Same with your job and what you do for wealth, building discipline into your spending. These are all things that should enhance your quality of life, not take away from it. Yeah. And for Nick and I, our ultimate goals that we work towards in life are relationships with God and with family and with friends. So weights and wealth aren't not the most important thing, despite the podcast focusing primarily on those two things. They're things that can enhance your life if you're doing them correctly, we think.
Yeah, just use them kind of like the smartphone. Use them as tools and just not just to have random fun with, or I guess as a goal. I'm trying to draw a parallel. That didn't work perfectly. But
well, when people make their physique the most important thing in their life, it's very hard for them to maintain stable relationships with other people, right? It can be an important thing in your life, and it can take 3 hours out of your week going to the gym and then a few more hours of meal prepping, and it doesn't have to be the only thing in your life for you to still be successful with it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I mean, if you're doing like prioritizing the gym over spending time with people around you, now sometimes, I mean, like you can compartmentalize your time, but just don't let it start to take the priority. Oh, and then the same thing with money. I think people can kind of tend to fall into this thing where money is just your ultimate goal, and it can kind of, some people use money as like a measure of success, which I think is unfortunate because it really doesn't say anything about who you are as a person. And if you let that overtake your life, and if you ended up worshiping money, then the rest of your life kind of just starts to fall apart. So and then so we'll kind of be going over the positives and negatives of money and health. So the positives, they enable you to do more things that you want. You know, if you take care of your health, you'll have more energy, you can do more things, and it just kind of lets you enjoy those things more because you're not feeling tired all the time and you're looking forward to those kind of things. With money, you can do more extravagant types of things with people. You know, you can go on trips, you can afford to go out to eat, or really anything. I don't know. It just enables you to spend quality time with others.
Yeah, and if your health is good, not just in, it doesn't just give you more energy to be able to do the things that you want to do and spend time with the people you want to spend time with. It also allows you to probably be a lot more mobile, and it gives you freedom, especially as you age. Elderly people that lose their mobility, that harms the quality of their life in many cases, right? So you want to stay healthy so you can stay mobile and free and physically on your own as you age. And then I would say the same thing with money. It buys you freedom. So rather than, I mean, you said like being able to do extravagant things, which is cool if that's what it's like, that's what you want to do. But also I think more importantly, money can buy you freedom to do what you want. And the real thing is freedom to spend your time where you want it. Because ultimately, if you're not worried about money anymore, if you're able to get financial freedom, which a lot of people harp on people that are trying to get to financial freedom at a young age. But I think it's important to have that be like a side venture in your life, having a path to financial freedom eventually, so that when you are in that place, you can basically spend your time however you want it.
And yeah, that's our next positive is time. I mean, time really is your most limited resource, you know. There is such thing as having so much money that you don't have enough time to spend it. And so when you have money, you can pay people to do things for you. You know, like we talk about Uber Eats. Personally, I'm starting to get kind of big on it because, I mean, other than the health aspect, but you know, I'd pay an extra like $4 or $5 to save like 30, 40 minutes of my time between cooking, going to the grocery store, is like, especially if I'm at work, you know, because I would have to stay that much longer if I went out and had to go get my own meal. It gets worth those extra couple dollars to me to have somebody bring food to me.
Yeah, I think it depends in that case specifically, like how often you're doing it. Because if you're always doing Uber Eats, it's going to be really hard to stay healthy, I think. I mean, there are healthy options out there. It's not like every time you Uber Eats, you're doing a terrible thing to your health. Like, there's good options out there. Nick and I we didn't do Uber Eats yesterday, but we got food yesterday because we were both working, not on Weights and Wealth, but we were just both working during the day, and we didn't want to take time to cook because we took time to cook breakfast. So we just got barbecue and just had a nice lunch.
Yeah. But, and like I guess what I'm kind of trying to get at is that I do it so I can save myself time. It's not because I'm lazy and don't want to just cook my food. It's not like I'm just sitting on the couch watching TV. It's so that I can keep doing something else.
Yeah. Hormozy is big on this, on always doing like Chipotle and rotisserie chicken and never cooking to save yourself time so you have more time to work on your business. But he's hyper focused on like the business and money aspect. But there is something to like paying people to do things if you're in that financial situation. I feel like if you're not in a good place financially, you should try to do as many tasks yourself. unless you are legitimately working on a business. But if you're like a 9 to 5 worker and you're not in a good place financially, I don't think you should be paying people to mow your lawn, clean your house, get things sewed, right? If you can learn those easy, basic manual skills yourself, you can save a lot of money if you have that time and you're not spending that time working on a business. Because people claim they don't have time to do things when they have a 9 to 5 job, but like it's only 40 hours a week. And I know it's obviously very different if you have a family and if you have kids, but that's not really the audience we're talking to here. We're talking to people like out of high school, out of college, that are just tired after like a 40-hour work week, but you have so much time. Like you're not even using Saturday and Sunday for work. And I don't know if that's just their health isn't in a great place, so they're really tired, or if they just hate their job and they feel like they need to relax to cope with that. Because I mean, also I think it's part of like a nature thing if you have the drive to just like work. Like I feel like it's definitely more for males than females, and a lot of times having that drive to just be like a workhorse, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think that drive is also something that can be developed though over time, like we've talked about, through just being disciplined. Like you just kind of get used to it. It's just what you do.
Yeah.
And the one thing, I mean, my job has kind of taught me that a little bit because, you know, tax season, we usually work like 55, 60 hours a week. And then during the summers, I mean, I'm only billing, like, I mean, I'm usually there around 40 hours, but I have like 30 hours worth of work. And now I feel like I have all this extra time all of a sudden as soon as tax season's over, and I just want to kind of fill that with productive things now.
Yeah. That's our plight, always wanting to work more, I think. What'd you have for the last part of that?
The last one is helping others. So when you have your money and you have your health, you can use those to help others. Money is kind of obvious. You know, you can just give to charity and kind of make a positive impact. And then if you have your health, you know, you can spend your time, you can volunteer, like, because if you're feeling good, and then you have the time to do it, you can go out, volunteer, and help other people.
Yeah, it's kind of what we were just hitting on with unhealthy people coming home from their 9 to 5 and just being too exhausted to really do anything, you know, and just winding up in that Netflix kind of every night lifestyle. But with the money reminds me of something that Pastor Brandon told us in the interview, episode 12, maybe, whatever it was, early episode. Great episode. I recommend you check it out if you haven't. But we asked Pastor Brandon about money and what living like a biblical life looks like in terms of building wealth. And he said, building wealth is fine. But if you're living a biblical life, you should be doing stuff with that wealth to help other people. And the other part of that was that as you do get wealthier, it's harder to live a biblical life. And that's where all the different sayings in the Bible, whether you're looking at like Proverbs or any other part where they say, I forget the verse, but it's easier for a rich person to fit through the eye of a needle than get to heaven, right?
It's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than it is for a rich man to get to heaven.
Exactly. Yeah. So Pastor Brandon was saying how like being wealthy doesn't make you like a bad person, unable to live a biblical life. It just can make it harder for a lot of people.
Yeah. And I also don't really consider, at least in that context, being rich as like just having a lot of money. More what you do with that money. You know, you could go out and spend it on yourself. And yes, I think like you are material rich, that you have things around you that are worth a lot. Or you can go spend that money and put it to good use and try to better your community. And then one other thing, have you heard of Pretty Privileged, Ted? I know it's floating around the internet a little bit. No.
What is that, like not getting a speeding ticket for women that are pretty?
Basically, like when you look better, people treat you differently. And honestly, I can say that I have experienced it. When I'm not in shape, people just they're just not as nice to me, versus when I am, they are. It's kind of crazy how people talk to you differently, because when I'm 20 pounds overweight, and then versus in shape, it's just different. It's just something I've noticed.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I mean, that's like in sales, one of the recommendations a lot of times is, if you're like a salesman, be in good shape, because people are going to trust you and find you more disciplined and more honest, right? So I guess there is something to that. But did you have anything else for the context of pretty privilege, or how it fits in?
No, that was it. But I mean, like, you can just use that for good, kind of, because people tend to listen, like you said, to better looking people more. So if you are in good shape, you're going and have your health, you will very likely be better looking, and then you can kind of use your influence for good.
That's true, I guess. Yeah.
So, all right, now on to the negatives. Now we can get into a little bit of philosophy, just the difference between a means and an end. Do you know the difference, or it's like?
Yeah, I mean, like, the means is like how you get there, and the end is the end.
The end goal. Yeah. Yeah. So basically, we view these as a means, and the negatives kind of start to come about when people start to view money and health as your end goal. And there's that famous saying, money doesn't buy happiness, which I think is completely spot on. Because a lot of people are very wealthy, but they end up getting divorced because their job is taking over their life, and they don't have an ordered life where their family is on top of their job and money, etc. And Ted said to me the other day that he's always heard that rich old people want to be broken in their 20s, largely because they have their health and their time and all that.
It's like the Dalai Lama quote that we went over really early on. That might have been like episode 2 or episode 3, but about how the weird paradox of humans is that early on we'll trade our health to make money, and then at the end of our lives, people just want to trade their money to get their health back.
That's why we try to do both simultaneously. Like right before this, we just went for a walk, even though we're trying to bust through these as quickly as possible. But we got to take care of our health and get that vitamin D.
Got our shirtless walks in. Got some steps. Got some vitamin D. But yeah, like you were just saying, the weights and the wealth are both paths that you should probably be following as kind of like side roads on your journey your entire life as you pursue the relationships that we've talked about.
Yeah, and it's easy to let one take over the other, but try to stay on both. Yeah. And yeah, health doesn't give you happiness by itself. I do think it should take priority over money in the aggregate. Because, if your body's not functioning properly, you're more susceptible to, like, I think depression, anxiety, right? And you just won't feel as good. And that also makes it harder to work, too. Yeah.
There's a lot of really happy poor people, people living in poverty, but I feel like there's not as many happy, chronically diseased people. Right. So, I think a lot of us would say we'd rather have health than wealth. But yeah, I think also whenever people follow one of these extremes in either weights or in wealth, a lot of times they wind up lonely, right? Like Nick was saying, how people that are too immersed in their businesses, they get divorced. Like, that's probably not the best for their relationships, obviously, right? So, and then same, like if you look at a lot of influencers on Instagram, they're posting a highlight reel that looks like they're really happy, but their relationships are not good in their personal life, and they're not actually happy. So the only thing that you can really get joy from, I think, is all the different relationships in your life.
Yeah. All right. Do you have anything else?
No, I think that's it. This is not the longest episode, but definitely a good topic to cover.
Yep.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for joining us today at Weights and Wealth. And don't forget to apply today's lessons to live healthy and wealthy.
If this conversation will contribute to your fitness and financial gains, please share it with a friend or family member. and give a 5-star review so more people can lift bigger weights and get bigger bank accounts.